Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Inkwell, where we dip into our pool of knowledge and experience to share insights and best practices on the big topics affecting HR professionals. I'm Emily Miller. I'm the Director of Marketing at Purple Ink, and today I'm going to be talking to some members of the Purple Ink team about different styles and formats for workplace learning. From traditional in person instructor led sessions to bite sized, self paced nano learning courses, there are a wide variety of ways to learn today, and understanding what's out there and what's the right fit for your team can be overwhelming. So, we are here to help. Let's start off by having you two introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Jody Curtis, and I'm the founder of Purple Ink and do work with Michelle a lot on our training and development.
Hi, I'm Michelle Cowan, and I serve as the Director of Learning and Development here at Purple Ink.
Michelle, one of the buzzwords we've been hearing lately is asynchronous learning. So, what is asynchronous learning?
It's about learning and education that doesn't happen in real time. So, a lot of us were raised up in the L&D field where everything was an in-person course, and asynchronous learning gives us that opportunity to have learning through different modules, through different formats that really allow people to learn on their time.
Yeah. And what are some of the advantages of asynchronous learning?
For individuals, it's that I can take that course at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever works for me. So it really meets people in their learning style. I can also go back and revisit that learning. So if there's a concept, I was like, let me go back and check that out again. I have that opportunity with asynchronous learning. The benefit really for an organization is you don't have to worry about schedules. You don't have to worry about people being in the same room at the same time. It really gives you that scalability that's so vital, especially today as we look at the financial benefit as well as of that scalability.
And how do you keep asynchronous learning engaging and interactive for people?
That is always the key. What I say to folks is this is not, I'm just going to take the content I normally teach in class and I'm going to throw it into an authoring tool and put it in an LMS. And there we go. We're all done. Some of the things you do is have some knowledge checks throughout, have activities. We have seen over the last decade or so, our authoring tools really improve to have more opportunities, as we say in the business, to branch. So maybe I'm going to pick an answer to a question. And depending on how I answer that, now I'm going to go down a path that's different than somebody else who chose a different answer. So we can really begin to customize that experience more than we have in the past. So have some great knowledge checks, have some opportunities to have some real scenarios and actually participate. Gamification is another great way to keep people engaged in their learning.
All right, Jody, let's switch gears to another L&D trend that we've been hearing about. What is nano learning?
Yes, learning is relatively new in the scope of different learning formats, but they are short, typically no more than 10 minutes long. You might have an hour-long course, but you could do it in 6 10-minute sessions. So maybe while you're waiting to pick up a kid from school, or you're at the doctor's office, or you need to get a training done in a certain period of time, but blocking a whole hour is difficult for you to do. They're not just shorter content, though. We like to think of it in our nano learning courses as intentional learning. And it really follows three different rules. There's one objective, one scenario or example, and one check for learning. And that keeps it impactful and easy to apply.
And how do you make sure that nano learning leads to long term retention of that content?
Yeah. Well, and great question, right? You think if you're doing it in 10-minute increments, is that going to stick with you? But retention comes from retrieval practice, which really strengthens our memory far more than rereading or rewatching content. That's why we always have a check for learning. So you know you're going to be asked, have to answer a quiz about the question, so you're more likely to pay attention or to follow along. But again, it really works best as a reinforcement, not replacement.
It's much like we used to talk about just in time training. It's that very concept. It's just as needed. I need
Mm.
it. I get it. I move on with my day. And so that's one of the benefits too of that is it can give me that quick fix I need to get on with being productive in what I'm doing.
Right.
So, Michelle, we've been talking about technology and the flexibility to learn on your own, and those are certainly fueling a lot of these L&D trends, but the human connection is still important too. So, can you tell us about what peer or social learning is?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I think we're hearing from people, I know it's been 6 years. I mean, it sounds bizarre to say that 6 years since COVID. But I know one of the things that really we saw a lot of uptick in technology learning during COVID because that's what we needed to do, right? And we had that ability to pivot. But what we know is people crave human connection and learning together. One, it tends to be a lot more fun to hang out with other people and learn, but also there's that benefit of peer learning where we learn from one another, and that's really what it's about, learning from one another, the experts that are sitting right next to us every day, either in an office or sitting next to us in a Zoom call, but really being able to tap into that knowledge that everybody brings to the table.
And what are some creative ways to encourage social learning in remote or hybrid teams?
You know, it can be everything from let's take time during our team meetings to have one of our team members share something that they have some expertise in or something that they're really interested in that they're learning more. It can be as easy as that. Let's take a few minutes and do that. It can be that we have a platform that we all are talking to one another, whether it's Slack or 15.5 or something where we're with Teams, where we're able to communicate with one another and share. Some people make it more formal. You can have an intranet where you have a platform where people can share resources and knowledge. So it really you can just get out your phone and have a group text, right? So it can be as simple or as complicated as your budget allows and that your time allows to create that social learning. And you know what? Let's be honest. We also social learn when we have coffee together, when we have lunch together, and you can do that virtually as well as in person,
Yeah,
right?
that's true. So, Jody, here is another buzzword we've been hearing a lot. What is experiential learning?
Yes, well, that is learning by doing, really giving people hands on opportunities, challenges, scenarios, simulations, and real world practice rather than just listening or reading about a concept. We describe this as learning that happens through maybe friendly competition or practical application, but not passively, not just sitting and listening. And we'll talk later about blended learning, but I think this is a good time to introduce that concept of experiential learning can be done all by itself. You can just have an experiential learning activity, or you could have, say, a whole morning of training and some parts of that training be experiential. So I know most people don't like to hear the word role play, but role play that most people are familiar with would be an example of experiential learning. So,
Jody, I'm guessing some of our viewers are thinking, do I have to pick just one? And you touched on this a little bit earlier, but can you tell us about what blended learning is?
Yeah, so it really is combining several of these different types of learning that we've talked about. And you don't have to do all of them, right? We at Purple Ink are constantly combining learning with social learning and with experiential learning. And now we're doing a lot more where maybe there's asynchronous learning happening where someone's doing some of the work on their own, and then we come back together for live group training or that social learning in a community online as well too. But it really is creating a mix tailored to content and learner needs. It's about meeting people where they are, and some people learn better in different formats. So understanding what are those best learning ways for your employees or team members and trying to do a blend or trying to do more of how most people do learn best.
And Michelle, what factors do you consider when deciding which elements to combine in a blended learning program?
I think first and foremost, you need to look at the goal. What's the goal of this training or learning? What are the outcomes? What are the skills, knowledge, abilities, the behaviors, the judgment folks need to make? So what are those outcomes that you're looking for? I think that helps to drive the decision. The other piece of that is who is your audience? Where are they physically? Where are they, back to Jody's point, psychological safety for them? So, know your audience. So, know your objectives, know your audience. How complex is this topic? Because some topics will lend themselves to different modalities depending on how complex it is and how much folks need to interact with the materials. So, there are some things that whether it's a live webinar or a live in-person class are better when we need to really practice some skills with another human being. AI and online courses can only do so much. When you really need to practice having a critical conversation, you you very often need another human being to practice having that critical conversation with. So, how complex is the topic? And how are people going to apply the skills that they learn? And how are people going to be accountable for what they learn? So I take all those things into account as I think about which modalities I'm going to use and how I'm going to use that. The most important thing is you don't want to have blended learning and say for the sake of, hey, we're going to have variety. It's the spice of life. That's not the goal here, right? Is not just to have variety, but have learning that meets people where they are, meets the needs of the organization intentionally. So it's
Hmm.
the intentionality, I think, that makes a difference when you're thinking about what way you're going to deliver that learning. This is a constant evolution, right? As we watch the learning and development industry, we see it continuing to develop, to morph, and all the changes that are happening. And I think what's critical to organizations is you don't have to do everything all at once. Go back to thinking about what is the strategy? What's the outcome you're looking for? What does your time, your resources, your time, your budget look like? And then try one thing. Try one thing differently than what you're currently doing and then test it out. The great thing about a pilot is you test it out. If it works great, you can start to replicate that. Not so much. Okay, that's not one that fits your culture and your organization.
Great advice. This has been such a helpful conversation about what's out there and what's coming next. So thank you both for joining me and sharing your insights. And thank you all, viewers, for joining us to talk about learning and development today. If you have any questions or you're looking for a provider to partner with to offer any of these kinds of development that we've discussed, please reach out to us at Purple Ink. We would love to help.